It's a time of amazing change. A time when people with real vision can seize and exploit new opportunities. For their own good, or for the greater good. That was Hull in 1891. And the man who saw and seized his opportunity was a miller's son called Joseph Rank. Joseph Rank was quite literally born a miller. His father owned this old windmill preserved on Hull's Holderness Road. Like many of today's millers, Joseph started at the bottom, sweeping up, running errands and learning to cope with a surprising and demanding environment.
It was like a different world, a different planet. It was quite a frightening sensation when you saw the belts moving around and everything moving.
Looking around at all the belts, whizzing round and looking at the guys repairing them and thinking how good that was and how I'd like to do it, because I started as a cleaner.
That first day, it was absolutely horrendous, it was honestly.
And so I was new, so they came up to me and asked me to go to the stores for a long wait. So being so naive, I actually went and I was stood there for 3 hours.
I kept getting lost in the fact that I had to keep using my radio and describing exactly where I was, which door, etc. to the shift manager, so he could actually guide me all the way back to the original start. And yes, I did get stick for it.
Sometimes young Joseph would go out on the rounds with his father, meeting the customers and learning for himself what they needed. That might suggest the world of the classic Hovis ads, relaxed, romantic and comfortable. But the reality was very different. This was hard, demanding work throughout a long working day.
Most days we used to set up at 5 in the morning and many a time we didn't finish about 10 o'clock at night.
When you got your deliveries of wheat and raw materials in bags, not bulk, and there was a lot of physical effort involved in them days.
It was very hard work because all the sacks at that time were £112 or 50 kilos.
I was pretty strong in them days, but someone put that right for you. It's when you got a few of them bags on your back.
On his father's death, Joseph Rank left the family mill and bought a windmill in the Holderness Road. Small, old-fashioned and run down. It was difficult to make it pay. But that didn't stop him meeting and proposing to a farmer's daughter called Emily Vose. Next, he bought a share in another mill, the Holderness Corn Mill, also known as West's Mill. Soon he was making real money, but still not enough.
We've got to be forward thinking, we've got to have the knowledge, we've got to know the product that they're working with, we've got to know the mill that they're working on.
Joseph had seen a new mill at Tadcaster, which ground its corn using a series of rollers. The system had been pioneered in Europe, but this one had been built by a Silesian-born engineer called Henry Simon, now living in Manchester. It was costly, cutting-edge technology, but the flour it produced could easily compete with high-quality imports from North America.
With a roller mill compared to a stone mill, you get a lot more capacity. You also get the ability to mill a greater range of wheats. What they actually found was that the imported wheats of years ago were too hard and they just splintered on the stones, so you ended up with a very dirty looking flour.
On the 1st of April 1885, Rank opened the Alexandra Mill in Williamson Street, producing 6 sacks or 3/4 of a ton an hour. Other millers promptly dubbed it Rank's Folly, but before long they were forced almost literally to eat their words. The flour was so good that other millers bought it to improve their own product. But for Joseph Rank, this was not enough. He wanted an even bigger mill, and by 1890 the designs for the Clarence Mill were well advanced. Those plans were drawn up by another of the city's up-and-coming men of business, Alfred Gelder, who would be 3 times Lord Mayor of Hull.
Joseph Rank and Alfred Gelder, schoolboy chums, grew up together, were Methodists, would have gone to the same chapel, lived in the same part of town, and actually formed a very close relationship.
In Hull, Gelder and Rank would become key figures in shaping the city, its buildings, its amenities and its future. Gelder created Queen's Gardens and the Paragon Arcade, and even laid ambitious plans to bridge the Humber. His company, like Rank's, is still working today and still in the same business. In the 1890s, fishing, engineering, shipbuilding, oil milling and flour milling looked like the new sunrise industries. But Rank's own future was mortgaged to the hilt. He'd borrowed £14,000 from the Yorkshire Penny Bank. Yet even that was only enough for the buildings. Luckily for him, Simon accepted a deferred payment for the mill machinery. Simon gained worthwhile publicity, and Rank got the best and most sophisticated milling equipment of the day. He also got direct access to a deep water port, and that would be critical to his success.
For many years we were dependent on imported wheat from all over the world, Canada, America, Australia and so on. So they all had to be deep water ports.
And so in 1891, the first millers started grinding flour at Clarence Mills, using a process that would seem very familiar to their successors.
I think if Joseph Rank came into the mill now, he'd walk along and I think he'd be very pleased that it was still running as he intended it to run.
This mill is like a running museum. Can you imagine all the people that have walked on these floors all these years? And they was using exactly the same machinery that I'm using now.
In modern day terms, it was a difficult mill because it was so elaborate. In Miller's terms, it was a great mill because there were all manner of adjustments you could make, and you could adjust the flour quality almost infinitely.
The heart of Rank's first mill was the powerful triple expansion engine that drove all its equipment. In 2005, the heart of Clarence Mills is this 600 horsepower electric motor still driving most of the main equipment through a series of pulleys and belts.
It was exactly the same class, it was exactly the same size, it even had the same people who made it in the same years. As when I was in the Royal Navy, I actually went on board aircraft carriers, which was the Ark Royal and the Eagle, which are the original Second World War ones, not the modern ones now, and they had exactly the same generators.
Rank had trouble with his 1891 engine just a few days after it started work. The problem turned out to be air getting into the water pipeline at low tide. Many years later, the tides could still be a problem because the drive cables from this motor hang above a pit that's open to the river.
That used to slowly fill up with water, something we had to keep a close eye on. And when it got within an inch or two, it was time that we took the feed off and stopped the mill. We didn't risk it any further.
Well, we actually changed the armature. It went back for a rewound, about eight years ago, something like that. And the actual people that did it sent one back, and when they started putting it in, it was 6 inches longer than the one they took out. Now, I do remember that because it was cold at the time and it was snowing. Obviously, it had to go in through from the yard.
In 1891, most of the wheat came in barges and was discharged by 2 elevators with a capacity of 40 tons each. Later, road and rail deliveries became equally important. But even in the 1930s, flour was delivered by horse-drawn drays like this one. This aerial view of Clarence Mills in the 1930s shows very clearly how wheat could be delivered from the dock by road or by rail to the train sheds at the front of the mill. Notice how the mill buildings now stand on both sides of the street leading to the Drypool Bridge.
In the old days, the wagons used to arrive. They used to come on trailers, small trailers, tractors, trailers, and the ships outside and barges. We had a massive floating armada, basically, floating warehouses with the barges.
And I remember being in the ship's hull, discharging the wheat, and my father worked here. He He came out onto the harbour side, I think he was on 62 that day, and looked down in the ship to see if I was okay. And I remember being in the ship and waving back to him saying, yeah, I'm here, everything's okay.
Well, in my time here, in the 32 years I've worked here, it's been tremendous changes. It's mainly the same thing that it's always been. It's producing flour at the end of the day. But the conveyors and the systems themselves have been upgraded and modernised. For instance, the silo, it's capable of doing a tonne a minute on the intake side. That wheat is carried up an elevator and then onto some now modern conveying systems, which can carry up to 200 tonne an hour.
All our wheat now comes in approximately 30-tonne vehicles. It's sampled, checked for its quality. Once we've established that and we want to take the wheat in, we tip it into the silo. Some primary cleaning takes place to remove any large impurities.
We've had shovels, spades, all manner of things, including a compressor which weighed about a tonne and a half, and he didn't know it had gone in the lorry till we got it at the other end.
That wheat is then transferred to the bins where the mill actually takes its blend, which is commonly known as the grist. And then it comes onto the mill, and it's basically through 5 different processes. The first one being breaking, where it goes through brake rollers. The inside of the wheat berry is removed to take out the endosperm. Then sieving takes place to separate the endosperm that's been removed from the bran skin. Then the endosperm would go to purification to clean up that stock. Then it would go to grinding rolls, which are smooth rolls, to actually grind that semolina and produce the flour. It would then go on to the final stage, which would be dressing, which is very, very fine, sieving, which in days gone by would be done on silk covers, but it's now done on nylon. And the flour is then dressed out and produced.
If Joseph Rank came back to the mill today, the brake section, the purifiers and the reduction rolls were just the same as when he was around, running faster and more streamlined, but the principles are the same.
There's always been something very special about the Founders Mill in Hull, something the team are very much aware of.
Well, my overriding memories of Clarence Mill, I suppose, are twofold. Firstly, the people. Secondly, strange as it may seem, the smell as you walked into the place. It smelt like a flour mill used to do years ago.
I love getting my hands in there. I love feeling the stock, changing this and changing that. Nowadays with these modern mills, they're not so much hands-on as press buttons, and they don't know what they're missing. They really don't.
It's milling how milling used to be, the best of the milling. Your long surface mill,
and milling by touch and smell.
That's it, touch and smell.
It might seem that the mills of 1891 and 2005 have a great deal in common, and in many ways they do. But the history of the original Founders Mill came to a sudden and dramatic end in May 1941.
When Hull was getting blitzed, this place took a hit, and because they was trying to fight the fire, the water got into the wheat bins and it forced the wheat out into the river. It actually flattened some people at the other side of the river. When this was all over, you had a river full of wheat. That caused an infestation throughout the town. There was all sorts of things flying about, different kinds of bugs and rats and mice. There was 15,000 tons of wheat maybe in the river.
Rank was now 86 years old, and when he saw the damage, he was appalled. Some of my life's work seemed to be going away fast, he said. Rank died in 1943, but his work went on. And with all but one of the buildings on the site totally destroyed, it was time to rebuild the Founders Mill. Once again, the plans were put in the capable hands of Gelder and Kitchen. Once again, Simon would provide the machinery, and the new Clarence Mills would be more than a match for any of the other mills in the Rank Empire.
Tom Smart used to come to site every 3 months, and his main visit was new crop, because between September, October time, the new crop wheat would start to arrive at Hull, and we used to come for what he called trial millings. And Tom was very, very keen on making sure that everything was right, and we used to run around and make sure that it was set up to his standards, because he had very, very high standards.
Brian Lawson was always good fun to be working with in the mill. Robin, of course, was a miller who I always admired his skill. Many others, not only in the mill, in all the departments, because they were always so helpful and wanting to help and wanting to make sure they'd done everything that you wanted.
We believe the flour that we produce here at Hull to be better than what you get in the new mills. This is what you call a long surface mill. It's very old. We think there's the skill that we all have in keeping obsolete machinery running, really.
It was just fun to mill in it. Very hard work, as I think I said before, but it was great fun to be able to keep on changing the quality of product as you went along.
Always something new to learn. I think many people have enjoyed the process of coming to work here.
It's the sheer pleasure in keeping it running. I mean, to be running off line shafts still at this modern day and age is absolutely ridiculous.
Mick Topham, who I think was mill engineer or maybe foreman engineer, but he did more than I think anybody else to keep that mill going in the machinery sense of the word. And many's the time the millers, including me, abused the machinery something wickedly, and poor old Mick would cringe, but he always managed to keep it going.
Once it's running, it's running. And if a bolt comes off, you've just got to use a hand leather to put it back on. Everything is moving at tremendous speed.
Because of the flexibility of this mill, we were unique in that we could make hard flours for bread making, soft flours for biscuit, and brown flours for wholemeals. So we were one of the very few sites that could do the full range of flours.
We had Gateshead main motor went down, Empire Mill burnt out down, and then Hull Mill just kept running 7 days a week after week, to supply the flour. And Rank owe them an enormous debt for helping over many, many years.
Fire in this mill is a serious business, especially when so much of the equipment is made of wood. That's why the mill had its own fire brigade right up to the 1970s. And on one occasion at least, it did happen.
The fire started in a roller mill. There's a feed roll which feeds the stock into the roll. That had actually broken. So what happens is you've got the two rolls going together in opposite directions, and the heat, they expand. And once the heat, they expand a touch, which then creates friction, which then spreads on what you call a brush cleaner, which is made of bristle, and that had actually ignited. With the mill operative opening the actual shutter door, it put oxygen there, and it just went up into an exhaust trunking, which then goes up to a filter unit, which heated up, which started the sprinkler system off as it should. That's why it's there. But the downside effect was that you've got flour and water, which creates a paste, which takes a lot of clearing up afterwards.
Everybody that was available came in, mopped up, clean-up operation, because it just goes so sticky does the flour when it's on the floor.
And it wasn't a question of push to get it done. Everybody sort of joined in and did their whack.
Diane Day was caught up in another incident she will never forget.
We was walking through the basement and there was an almighty yell, and they said, whatever you do, don't let that flour stop choking back up the mill, just keep it clear, make it go out the door, do whatever with my hands. So he went off and left me, and this flour was pouring out, and now I'm paddling it away and trying to get it out the door so it didn't choke back up the mill. And it got up to my waist, it got up to my chest, and it got up to my neck, and I'm thinking, somebody stop it. And like, tears were falling, it was everywhere. And then it stopped, so I thought, and I just sat in it. I just sat in it because I couldn't move. And then all the shift walked by, they'd forgotten about me. They actually forgot I was there. And I had to literally crawl out, and I went and sat on the bottom of the stairs and just cried. Then they remembered and come and got me, but I've never let them forget that. Never let them forget that.
Talking to people who've worked at the Clarence Mills, you get the feeling of a family that passes knowledge and pride down from one generation to the next, as well as having a lot of fun along the way.
Oh, you've seen some right characters here. Some you'd think those barmy.
Well, we used to deliver to this turkey farm, rank over sports, Cherry Valley, and we used to go across to Lincolnshire, was right in the heart of the country. You couldn't see any civilisation sort of thing. All there was turkeys. We're talking of millions of turkeys, and we used to have to fill the troughs up with food. And it was a real hot sunny day, and we was there together. And then you get a bit bored, you know, going from one to the other. And I said, you know, these turkeys don't really like Sandy Martin, which was our manager, you see. I said, they don't like him at all. So he said to me, why don't they? I said, you ask him. I said, do you like Sandy Martin? And they're shouting. And then all the turkeys, for miles around, all started gobbling, and the noise was horrendous.
Well, you couldn't do anything for tears was running on your face.
With people is the friendliness of them, the way that everybody's one for all and all's for one, and that's the way it's always been since I've worked here.
The underlying point was that they were friendly and willing and always wanting to help. There were very skilled people there. Don't be under any doubt about that. But the combination of skill and willingness is the key to Hull.
We all look after each other. We're one big family. It really is a great place to work for.
I agree, definitely. We all come together in times of need.
My brother originally got me the job in the place, but my Uncle Charlie was already working as a warehouseman. There was a tremendous amount of families working here, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters even, working as cleaners and all sorts of operatives.
I've seen the children grow up, because my daughter came here for the Father Christmas, and now she's 21. And I've still got photographs of that.
I don't think that I worked anywhere with a more friendly crowd. I mean, they were special.
I remember as a small boy going to the sports days at our own sports ground with the big white marquees up on the playing field, and it was an actual big event. All different sorts of races, everybody competing, massive family occasion.
The nights out we used to organise, you know, for everybody, all the millers, and we used to have Christmas parties organised.
I once got caught by the singer of a band group who was dressed like a cat, and I had to go out and perform with her, and of course it was good fun, and this was the atmosphere, good fun.
We used to have a sports club, there was a cricket team, there was a football team, and I actually introduced later on a rugby team to the site.
We used to make teams up from the warehouse, the mill, the silo, and some of the management. And we used to go on to organise a game between us. Doesn't matter who's on it, who started good. It was a settling scores day.
Actually, my ribs are still sore from the rugby games. He used to come out, and if somebody didn't like you or a little sniggle at you a little bit, they used to find out on the rugby field. But it was all in good fun.
Many of the older employees would take you back and reminisce about the old days. And of course the old popular one was the day Joseph Rank used to go round in his black coat, which was green with age. So many people must have told that story. I think it was always told with a great degree of affection.
It's clear that Joseph Rank regarded his milling team almost as an extended family. People he had to take care of, and it's easy to see why. Because he himself had done all the jobs he asked his workers to do, he had a deep concern for their welfare. In 1904, he introduced the very first non-contributory pension scheme, 4 years before the launch of the state pension. He also offered substantial bonuses to people who came up with ideas for improvements, something that at least one member of the 2005 team would have welcomed.
Biggest job I've done here is the third floor diverters. They all used to be wooden spouts where the millers had to climb on top of the scents and put the slides in by hand. Well, what I did, I made them all up in metal with the pneumatic valves and piped them all back to one central control unit. So they only had to go to the control unit to turn a valve, and that would turn over and save them climbing up on top of the scents every time.
But now even Collins' improvements are no longer enough. The long story of the founder's mill is finally coming to an end. In 1891, these men formed the very first milling team. In 2005, this will be the last.
It's nice to be part of history, if you like. I mean, we've both worked here a long time, and you know there'll never be anything like it again. So actually working with this is it really just is a special place.
Well, I know it was 1969 when I started, but it only feels like yesterday, because it's more like well, it has been here that long, it's like a second home to you. You know, I've spent most of my life here.
I think what I'll remember is the mates I've met here, really, and the good times that we have had. I've known some weird and wonderful characters in my time here, but overall I've had a thoroughly good time.
When the site has had any sort of issues or problems or needed to achieve anything, at the end of the day, the people have always come together, and we've always delivered, and it was good to be part of that.
Today, as in 1891, we're seeing another explosion in new technology. The marketplace is changing, not just year by year, but day by day. The next chapter in Rank's history will demand fresh ideas and new vision, and drive the need for new technology to meet the challenge of an industry that quite literally puts bread on the table. Clarence Mills are closing, but the founder's mill has left a rich and lasting legacy.
All the people at Hull Mill were very proud of Ranks and Clarence Mills.
Mine has been the pride of keeping this mill going, a pride of delivering the flour to the customer on time, in full, in spec, and meeting all those requirements. That has been a challenge, but it's something that I really do take a pride in doing, because despite us going, we've always maintained the standards at Hull, and that has been a great thing.
When you think back, the big thing about this site is its heritage and its history. It's got such a massive history. I've been privileged to be being part of that.
I feel great pride in this. I think I've contributed a lot over the years. We've innovated lots of new products that companies wanted to make, and we've actually got them right here, and it's gone out to other sites to replicate what we've actually done.
Let it be clearly understood, Clarence Mills, with this old gear, produced a